before World War II or during World War II, Japanese people believed that emperor is a, he's in the God's lineage. He's a, child of God, which is true, children of God,
Mhm.
human, but like really, like he's God almost. But when World War II finished, the emperor made a declaration that he is human. So at
Mm.
that point, Japanese people were devastated. They were like, they realized that, wow, like we were putting faith in delusion.
We're doing a class right now at course called Global Missions in the 21st Century. And as a part of the key course content for this class, we're doing interviews with leaders from around the world. And we are excited to release these to you and invite you to pull up a chair and listen in to these enriching discussions. Okay, well, I'm joined today by my good friend, Takaki and Ohya. I'm probably not
Yes.
pronouncing your last name correctly.
No,
I
you're
should by
doing
now,
well.
but Takaki is a PhD student, has been for several years here at Auburn University in the School of Business, and we met through church and got to become friends over the past several years, and it's been such a joy, Takaki, for me to get to know you, and for my family, my wife, my daughters, as you've taken a couple of our certificate courses, and so. Yeah, it's just through all those experiences, it's been a real pleasure and honor, joy to get to know you and just to hear your unique perspective on the Christian life and faith and ministry and God and the Bible and all the rest. So I'm excited for you to share, some of your perspective with me today and through this interview with my students and anyone else who might be listening. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Takagi, first of all, just tell us a little bit about your story. You know, you grew up in Kyoto, Japan. Tell us a little bit about yourself and as it relates to your story, some of the key people and places, events that had some shaping influence on you growing up in Japan.
Yes, sure. Technically, I was born in Kobe. It's the, like famous for
Oh,
beef,
that's
Kobe
right.
beef.
I wrote Kyoto and and I should have I knew Kobe. Sorry.
But I did live in Kyoto, so you
Okay,
didn't make
okay.
mistake. Yes. So yeah, I was born and raised in Kobe until I turned to be 18 years old, and I went to university in Kyoto, which is pretty close to my hometown Kobe, like 1.5 hours. And yeah, in terms of my upbringing, like my family, I have one younger brother and two, my parents, and so four people in the family, and my parents are very typical, I think, Japanese parents. My mother was really sweet, and my dad was like more quiet and strict. He was pretty scary when I was a, small kid. Um, and I think one of the important background about me is that I had not met any Christian people in my life until I studied abroad in Australia at the age of 21. So until that time, I knew about Christianity as culture, as Western thing, as a religion, but yeah, I didn't know much about it. I just went to school and grow as a typical, very typical Japanese person.
Mm. We'll talk a little bit later on about what goes on in the heart and mind of a typical Japanese. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about your experience as an international student in Australia and how you got connected to a Christian college ministry there.
Yes, so I studied abroad in Australia when I was in the second year and third year in college. And at that time, um, you know, I we have a very big entrance exam for university. And when I entered university, I wanted to study something. I wanted to learn English because if I can speak good English, I thought that I could get a good job. So my primary purpose for studying abroad is to improve my English and maybe interact with some local people, local students, and have some international experiences. So I never thought about going to church or studying the Bible. but one of my friends who went to Australia together, he started to go to international student ministry. This ministry is called Cross Cultures, and they held dinner gathering every Thursday for international students. And every Thursday we had, pretty nice dinner with cheap price, like $4, and ate dinner together and had a like maybe 30-minute, 1 hour conversation about specific, Bible chapter or verses. And at first, I was not that interested in Christianity itself. What I was interested in was more like, making new friends or having dinner for cheap price. But when I started reading the Bible with people there, I was shocked about the teaching, like what they teach and like high moral standard there. And also, I was also shocked by how Christian people interact with each other, just like brothers and sisters. So yeah, that's how I started to get involved with Christian community.
Yeah. So how long were you there?
I was there for 10 months, and I think I went to that group for like 8 7 8 months.
Okay. And then after you came back from Australia, you met an American missionary in Kobe, and then later started to go to a Japanese church there. So walk us through that experience and the impact that both the American missionary as well as the Japanese church had on your faith journey.
Yes. So when I went back to Japan, at that time, I already started to be more open for Christian people. I think, looking back, like I had several different phases of my faith journey, and my first phase was like emotional acceptance. I was like emotionally a little bit, against Christianity before going to Australia, but it was mainly because I just didn't have any Christian friends, or, I heard a lot about, like scary thing about religions in general. So after I came back from Australia, now like at that time I was more open, and I knew that Christian people were really like loving and they care about each other. But at that point, at that phase, I was more like interested in intellectual aspect of the Bible. Like, is it true? I know that Christian people are nice people. They're not like, they're not trying to make a war or something, but uh is it true? Is it the
Mm.
truth, as they say? And so, like, I started to go to the Bible study in Kobe, my hometown, and I met this one guy from the US, and he suggested that we could probably read the Bible together one on one so that we can have more, like deep conversation, and he might be able to answer some of the questions that I had about the Bible. So we started to meet regularly, like every week, and we read Romans for 3 years together.
3
Um,
years.
3 years, yes, Romans makes sense, right? Pretty complicated, but so yeah, I started to go to church as well. Um, and yeah, as I participated in church community, I had a chance to see more closely like how Christians relate to each other and how they put what they learn from the Bible into practice.
Hmm. And then your relationship with this American missionary friend continued even after he moved back to the States. Tell us a little bit about how that played out.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So he he was serving a church in Japan, and he unexpectedly, unfortunately, he had to go back to his country like after I think 3 months, like 3 months after he started to live in Japan. So he was
Mm.
pretty uh, sad. At the time, but he offered continuing the Bible study online. We used Skype, and every week we met, and then we read the book of Romans, verse by verse, slowly, because I had a lot of questions. Um, and yeah, when he didn't have any answer, he said he doesn't know. But um, yeah, most of the time he tried to listen to me very well.
Mm.
And even when he was not able to answer some questions, I was able to see his character and yeah, his honesty. So it was really helpful
Mm.
opportunity.
And you said for 3 years you studied Romans, but that time in Japan was only 3 months, so that meant most of those 3 years you were meeting on a Skype call. Is that right?
That's true.
Wow. Um, and during that same period, did you keep going to the church there regularly?
That's a good question. Actually, to be honest, for the first 1.5 years or 2 years, I didn't regularly go to church. Um, I don't remember why, but at that time, as a non-believer, going to church was not very, how can I say, uh, I didn't really enjoy attending church a lot at that time.
Mm,
Probably because I had a lot of questions and I had many things that I was not able to understand.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I think like really needed like really like, getting to the Bible, like really reading the Bible, like
mm-hmm,
in
mm-hmm,
depth.
mm-hmm,
But as I learn more about the teaching in the Bible, historical reliability of the Bible, the whole, basics about Christian theology, I started to want to be part of church community and see how they really embrace this teaching. Then I started to go
mm-hmm.
to church.
I see. Um, and did you discover in the church that there was um, you know, coherence and authenticity between the things that you were learning about what the Bible teaches and then how you were observing that being lived out among the Japanese Christians there?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, the church I attended was more like international church, so there were many,
Okay.
people from different countries. But
Mm,
I one thing that shocked me was that it was already like after I decided to get baptized, but when I was waiting for that day, several friends of mine after Bible study offered me uh, a prayer, like, "Hey, like let's pray for Takaki. He is now thinking about getting baptized." And um, even though like my missionary friend, he kept praying for me. But at the church, um, my friends prayed for me. And
mm-hmm,
this like experience of being prayed for is really special to me. And I
mm,
felt a lot of like spiritual love, strong love from them.
mm,
So that
mm.
was very, yeah, interesting to me.
So at what point did you decide, okay, yes, I want to follow Jesus Christ. I believe he is Lord and Savior and the truth, and I want to follow him.
It was when we uh, uh, almost finishing the book of Romans. As I said earlier, we spent about 3 years reading the book of Romans. And I met Christian people in Australia before that. So like in total, like already like 4 years passed. And I was really thankful to my friend who spent like 3 years with me every week almost. And like you know that you are getting close to the end of this book, right? Like, oh, we only have 2 chapters, so we will probably finish this book like in 2 months or something. So I really started to think about like, okay, so at the point, like when we finish reading this book, I want to share my honest opinion about Jesus with, uh, this friend of mine because he spent a lot of time, he showed a lot of love, and I felt that I should respond to his love, which, now I know that it's coming from Jesus. And I wanted to say something very honest and genuine. And I started to really think about it. What do I think about this book? What do I think about Jesus? Who is Jesus to me, really? And then, interestingly, every time when we met um, to read the book of Romans, tears came up to my eyes every time,
Mm,
almost. I don't know if noticed it or not. But the reason why I was almost crying was I felt that Paul is speaking to me personally through
Mm.
this book of Romans. And I felt that this book is written personally to me. I'm a Gentile and I'm a Gentile of Gentiles, and I have a lot of sins. And so, yeah, so at the point when we finished reading this book, I told my friend that I think I already accepted Jesus as my savior because I cannot think the Bible is not true.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it was more of something that happened to you rather than something you decided to do.
Yes, it almost felt like that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how did your family and friends respond to you, along this journey and then certainly after you became a Christian and were baptized?
Yes. So, in terms of my friends, some of them were a little bit cautious, like, "Hey, like, are you sure? Like, be careful." That was like pretty common thing I heard from my friends. Like, "Hey, I go to like this Christian uh gatherings, or I read the Bible with my Christian friend, and some of them told me that like, be careful, Takaki. Like, is it really like you know decent thing? Like, is it really like is your friend like a good friend? Um,
Mm-hmm.
which I totally understand, based on the Japanese religious landscape. My family, uh, my mother was always open. I often talked about what I learned from the Bible and, from interacting with my friends, Christian friends. And my mom was, yeah, pretty open. My dad was more like, um, yeah, it's okay, but just a little bit be careful kind of attitude, but they were really respecting my decisions, my faith, so I'm really thankful.
Mm. Now, you've told me in the past what's behind that comment, be careful, but could you unpack that a little bit? How did most Japanese view Christians and Christianity in Japan?
Yeah, so I think in general, Japanese people are spiritual but not religious, and they're really scared about any religious things. There are some like historical complex background, but I can probably point to specific two things. One is World War II. Before World War II or during World War II, Japanese people believed that emperor is he's in the God's lineage. He's a, child of God, which is true, children of God,
Mhm.
human, but like really like he's God almost. But when World War II finished, the emperor made a declaration that he is human. So at
Mm,
that point, Japanese people were devastated. They were like, they realized that, wow, like we were putting faith in delusion, right?
mm,
And then uh, Japanese society became more and more, I think, less religious. And also around 2000, like 1990, there were some like bad religious groups doing some like terrible thing, like religious cult group, terrorism attack to some Tokyo trains and this kind of thing. So people are now very skeptical about religions, and they're
hmm
pretty closed.
And one of those groups was quasi-Christian. I mean, they claimed to be Christian, right? Didn't it have at least some connection with Christianity that people made because of this cultic group?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And also like there was assassination of a former prime minister a few years ago. And this incident is also related to quasi-Christian group. So,
Mm,
and like, we don't have like Christian culture and Christian education in general. So we don't know like what is called and what is like orthodox, like, Christian
right,
teaching. So
right.
it's really hard to distinguish this cult group for Japanese people.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, let's jump the continents here. You came to Auburn a few years ago to get your PhD in business, focusing primarily on, or particularly on the work rest dynamic in 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 corporate in the corporate world. So why did that become a topic of interest to you? Work and rest and that dynamic. And since you've been in it for several years now, while also continuing to grow in your faith, um, what what has uh, your biblical theological resources have helped you think about the issue of work and rest, and how are you approaching that issue from a distinctly Christian vantage point?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for asking that. Well, one of the reasons why I got interested in this topic, work and rest dynamics, is that my parents are working a lot. Like my mom, she used to walk up to like, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. sometimes. My dad often came back to my house like at 12 a.m., 1 a.m., and it was pretty normal. And I picked up my younger brother when I was in elementary school from, Nazareth school, and like I made some instant food for him as a dinner. And um, so, yeah, my parents are so busy, and I'm still really thankful for their, effort for, providing us. But at the same time, they were tired, and I also see like some positive aspect of work too. Like, my parents' lives seem to be really affected by what happened in their work, right? Like when something good happens, they look happier. Something bad happens, they look unhappy, and it affects the whole family. So I
Mhm.
naturally started to feel that, wow, work is really important, and I want people to have, you know, enjoyable, nice, peaceful work. And I myself was pretty workaholic to be honest. When I was working in the industry, I was working a lot as well. So I started to really wonder, uh, especially like after I became a Christian, like what's the healthy way of walking? What's the biblical way of walking and resting? And yeah, some important biblical theological resources. I really enjoyed reading Every Good Endeavor by Tim Keller to, think really about biblical uh, meaning of work.
Mm.
Um, I, um, I also really enjoyed the Symphony of Missions, you know, uh, section about Sabbath as a counter to, modern um, efficiency-oriented societies norms.
Mm-hmm. 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 How close to being done are you?
I'm sorry, how close to?
Yeah, how close to being done with your PhD thesis are you?
Oh, well, that's a great question. It's I'm still working on it. Hopefully within 1.5 years or 2 years.
Okay, all right. Um, Well, so tell us a little bit more about, or tell us about what your experience as a Christian in Auburn has been like. What challenges have you faced? How has God provided for you and cared for you as a Christian Japanese person living here?
Um, First of all, I'm really thankful, and I genuinely feel that I'm really blessed. Living in Auburn as a Christian. I visited several different churches, and yeah, there are so many great churches here, and there are many wonderful Christians, and I have plenty of opportunities to learn from uh, many of my Christian friends. If I need to pick up some specific challenges that I faced here in Auburn, would be loneliness.
Mm.
Um, it's not necessarily, um, you know, like I'm not saying that like uh, um, people are not caring about me or, I have many good friends and I'm really thankful for each one of them. But living uh, as a foreigner, single person uh, can be sometimes very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't like in Auburn, there are not many Japanese people, so I don't speak my own language often. Um, but um, I now I feel that it was given from God. This loneliness is almost like a blessing because um, if I'm not, when I'm not lonely, I seek comfort from people and I don't need God like really like seriously.
Mm,
Um, but when I was lonely, I'm feeling better in terms of loneliness. Like I was really lonely like a few years ago for some reasons. Um, but because of these seasons, I needed to pray really seriously to God.
mm, mhm,
Before that, I might not have been like serious. I was serious in praying, but like I was like, wow, like when I have like pain and loneliness and struggles, now we can like truly pray. And I'm so
mm.
thankful that God taught me and many people encouraged me to rely on God in these
Yeah,
difficult seasons.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Now, you've been active in sharing the gospel with fellow graduate students, some of whom are American, some are from around the world. And as you know, many people from different countries that don't have a Christian heritage view Christianity as Western or Western religion, or even perhaps an American religion. So, as you've engaged them with the gospel as a Japanese Christian, yeah, what impact has that had on people coming from you because you're Japanese?
Yeah, I had not think about it real often, but that's very interesting. And maybe because I'm not American, I don't know exactly know like how American, for example, like non-Christian view American Christians, or how other international students view American Christians. But I felt like it seems like that there are some like ongoing political debates and like subdivisions. But I'm free from this like
Hmm.
division, right? Because I'm Japanese and I don't even have a right to vote here. So, um, one of my American friends, he had a strong skepticism toward American Christianity, but um, um, he knows that because he knows that I'm not American citizen, uh, I'm a minority in this country, and he wants to hear my uh, opinions. He is very gracious to ask some great questions, and I was able to share some of my um, faith with him, and I
Hmm.
realized that yeah, maybe like being a non-American can help like people like lower their guard a little bit, like um I'm not like imposing any like political ideology or um yeah, cultural thing. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's something I felt about this topic.
Yeah, have you noticed that with people from other countries as well?
Yes, I think in terms of people from other countries, they I think I'm a little bit in an advantageous position sometimes, not all the time, because I can more easily to say that I'm in their side. Like I'm on
Mm,
their side. Like I'm not from Christian background. I'm not born and raised in Christian family. I was like you, like I was non-Christian and I had a lot of questions. But now I uh, accepted Jesus as my savior. I was convinced. And then naturally some, not all, but some international friends of mine asked questions about like, why, like, you were not Christian and
mm,
what happened? And yeah, so I think in that sense, I'm a little bit in a better position. Of course, like I'm not American, so I'm not as fluent as, other native English speakers, and I'm not trained to evangelize people. But yeah, these things are something that I have, I guess, given from God.
Yeah. Well, you perhaps are more relatable to them.
Relatable.
In that regard, whether as compared to somebody who grew up in a Christian family in a Christianized, culture, is less relatable to them.
Mm.
You're more relatable, nearer to them in that sense. Um, and I'd say you have more training in evangelism than you let on, and uh, you're quite fluent, in my opinion, from having heard you speak in sharing the gospel. But um, so you know, I've known you long enough to know that you're a very brilliant person, very articulate, you think quite deeply and systematically, and you're a leader in your own right. What opportunities to influence and lead others, or even disciple others, have you had during your time here in Auburn?
I'm not sure about me being brilliant or not, but in terms of the opportunities that I had was I um, uh, thankfully I had several opportunities to do one-on-one Bible study with several different people in Auburn and in Japan since I came here. Um, I think I feel like it came natural to me to have more like engaged one-on-one Bible study kind of opportunities because that's exactly what I had when I was non-Christian. So as you said earlier, I can relate to some questions that some of non-believers have, and I can perhaps understand some struggles or frustration when non-believers go to church. So
Mhm.
I had a Chinese friend who spent about like 6 months to perhaps like almost 1 year to study the Bible together regularly. Um, he moved out to different cities, so now we are not studying the Bible anymore. But I had several other students who did quite similar thing, and one of my close friends in Japan, we I actually called him yesterday and read the book of John, but he started to read the Bible together like 1 year ago, and he became Christian last December.
Mm.
And now I'm so glad that I can continue to walk alongside with him as he um, grow as a as brother in Christ.
Yeah, the praise God. Yeah, and the pattern that American friend of yours, had with you, you've been able to do that very same pattern with others.
Yes, exactly. Now I feel like, I can see the behind the scenes, things.
Yeah,
I'm so
wonderful. That's
thankful.
wonderful. Um, well, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and ask you to think back. Now that you are a Christian, think back on yourself before you became a Christian, perhaps even before you went to Australia. Uh, and your former pre-Christian self in mind, but viewed from a Christian vantage point. Or you could think of people who are not, people living in Japan, maybe your generation, who are not yet Christians. I'm going to just ask you a few questions that connect with the book that our students are reading for this course by J.H. Bavinck. Who was a Dutch missionary in Indonesia for many years. And anyway, he in this book he writes about how God has put in the human heart five. He categorizes five magnetic points. He calls them that are like magnets pulling us towards God. But in our sin, and going back to Romans 1, we suppress the truth. We suppress that desire, and turn and serve the creature rather than the creator. But And so I want to we're going to walk through some of these and ask, how have you seen this, or how do you see these magnetic points in the hearts, either your pre-Christian self or in Japanese that you know. And the first one that Bavinck talks about has to do with connection. That we have we're born with the sense that we are connected to some totality. We're not isolated, atoms floating around in the universe. That we're born into a family, for starters, but we intuit before anyone has to teach us that we are connected both to other people and to a broader, cosmos, a broader world. Um, and so, and yet on the other hand, we often feel quite small, and we wonder how we, as this tiny little, speck on a planet that's a tiny little speck in the grand universe, how we fit and how we connect. So, in what ways do you see Japanese people longing for connection? And where do they find connection? And conversely, how do they experience that desire for connection being frustrated? Can you speak to that?
Yes. Um, as you might have already known, Japanese culture is pretty collectivistic. So in terms of that, we care about mutual connection. We care about interacting with each other. But so like we used to have like pretty strong community. Um, and I'm not sure. Connection. I feel like now many people are kind of getting tired of community because in the Japanese culture, sense of community, it's a place to connect with each other, but also uh, there's a strong sense of like give and take. So like if someone do something to you, you needed to give something back. This kind of culture is pretty strong in Japan. So people kind of started to feel tired of maintaining community, and they started to be more, individualized now. So people, uh, seek like comfort from more like entertainment or this
Mm,
kind of thing. So to be honest, sense of connection is getting a little bit weaker, and that's exactly something that I felt. Strongly, that sense of connection. When I went to Christian community in Australia, when I went there, I was like, wow, what is this community? Like people are connected to each other more like genuinely, like they are not hiding anything. They are not, uh, presenting the different version of themselves to others. They're just
mhm,
so genuine.
mhm.
I'm
Yeah,
not sure if I answered it
no, that's great. Yeah,
correctly.
it connects with something uh, a previous interview I did not too long ago with Rote, as a pastor there in Tokyo, was sharing that it's both collective, but yet they're individualizing forces at work in Japan
Yes.
too. And when my family spent a few weeks there a couple summers ago, I knew going in, it's Asia. I lived in China. I knew about collectivism and collective culture and the influence that has. Um, but when I was there, it seemed like, with the commuter culture and, everybody commuting sometimes from 45 minutes away, an hour away to work or to school. And if you take those trains, nobody's talking. Everybody's, on their phone, listening. Their earbuds are in, and their phone is, so it's like there's no interaction going on.
Right.
And that's a big chunk of your day. And then that you're working 70 hours a week, often, at a computer, at a desk, and then you go home, and many people, especially 20 somethings, they live alone. So it seemed like, despite it being a historically collective culture, it seemed like people are pretty isolated. So
Mm-hmm.
and then Ryuta was sharing that, in terms of public life, the norms of the corporate culture are imposed, but when
Mm.
people go home, they can be whoever they want to be. So the expressive individualism that we see in America is in private. is what is, Japanese do, in their homes. They can post whatever on their, social media feed. They can watch whatever, that kind of thing. I don't know. That's what he shared. So when you mentioned, yeah, there's kind of a both and going on right now. That seemed to make sense in light of what he shared too.
Yes, and I think like it used to be like, like companies used to be more like a community like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. So like at that time, probably like people have like family and company. These two different areas are main, community for them, like, how people connect with each other. But now people are, as I said, like, people are a little bit tired of like drinking culture. Perhaps,
Mm,
younger generation do not necessarily like, drinking with their supervisors or colleagues because like as you have mentioned, even when we are drinking with our colleagues or supervisors, we needed to present corporate version of ourselves. Like we need
mm,
to do
mm.
like, okay, boss, like your glass is empty, so let me,
Right, right,
pour
right.
some beer. So yeah, probably it's changing, and now like Japan is kind of like in a what like transition in terms of like how we
Mm.
connect to people.
Yeah, right. And then the Christian community stands as a contrast community for that, theologically, it respects both the our individuality as human persons, distinct
Mm.
from other human persons, but also respects the fact that we're not in the, we are connected to humanity as a whole and to the new humanity reconstituted in Christ for those who are believers. And so, you kind of get the unity with the corporate body, but also diversity of individual persons. So, in that
Mm.
sense, it offers maybe what Japanese are, looking for in this time of transition.
Yes.
The second of Bavinck's magnetic points is um, one way to phrase it would be norms or morals, a sense of there's some sense that there is an objective right and wrong, good and evil, um, honor and shame, perhaps you might say, that is external to the person. In other words, we don't just all make up our own morals. We instinctively know that there's some standard out there. So what forms a Japanese person's view of right and wrong, good and evil, honor and shame?
I think there's no one specific foundation like Christianity, but I think many Japanese people are affected by Confucian
Mm-hmm.
philosophy and
Mm-hmm.
Buddhism kind of worldview, and also Shintoism, which is a local religion in Japan. Like, the mixture of these different factors are influencing Japanese people's view about right and wrong. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think like especially like elementary school education is taking a pivotal role in shaping these like moral standard. I'm not sure about American schools, but at least in my generation we had a subject called moral studies when I was in elementary school, and these moral studies are not about philosophy or anything. Like we were like 7 years old, 8 years old. um, we read some like stories, and it's like kind of like Bible, like it's a moral story,
Mm-hmm.
and teacher teaches morality, so like showing care to other students.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very another like very interesting resources. It's called Instruments of a Beating Heart. It's a Oscar nominated documentary film. It's very short. It's made by Japanese director, and this documentary films is all about elementary school student life and
Mm-hmm.
how teachers discipline elementary school kids. And it's just a normal elementary school student's life. Like, why is it nominated for Oscar? I think the reason is like it's probably to Western people, it's pretty shocking, like how they teach things
Yeah, yeah.
in Japanese schools. So
Wow,
it's
that would be
another thing.
fascinating to watch. When we were there, Tokyo's a place of 30 million people.
Mm,
But everything was orderly. People were respectful. I had the sense that I could probably leave my phone or my wallet just, on the sidewalk all day and I'd come back and it would probably still be there. Or
Yeah,
even, and just like we were kind of shocked and amazed at how safe it felt to us. And in other words, the moral training uh, seems to be working quite well. Now, I
mm,
don't know if people internally feel oppressed by that or feel like they fail or whatever, but externally to the foreigner living there, yeah, we were pretty amazed at how safe it felt. Yeah.
I'm glad that you felt that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Um, the third point he mentions is about deliverance, that we have a sense that things are uh, not all is well. Something is wrong with the world. Things are broken externally. The world is broken, but even internally, we have a sense that I'm not all that I should be. We kind of just know that intuitively from the human experience. Um, and we're longing for some kind of solution or resolution, or maybe they wouldn't say it this way, but if Bavinck is right, every Japanese person is longing for salvation. They may not phrase it that way, but longing for something to yeah, bring about salvation. So
Mm.
where do you see that longing sort of popping up in the Japanese heart?
This is actually a difficult one because what I feel is almost like I think like maybe like one thing I can mention about this is like Japan has a lot of disasters. For example, like yesterday, 11th of March, is a day that when a big earthquake happened 15 years ago. Like
Mm,
10,000 people died because of this earthquake, and
mhm,
tsunami happened. A lot of people got drowned. And like my hometown Kobe, when I was like the age of like 2 years old, there was a big earthquake and 6,000 people died. Um,
mm,
so we have a lot of disasters and like people uh kind of know that we are powerless and like our world is broken. That's one part of like broken world, right? And then to me, like Japanese people almost gave up. Like looks like like they kind of accepted it, and like our
mm,
life is short, and like and we might die tomorrow. So why don't we enjoy our lives? I think that's
mm,
pretty common narratives that I hear, like enjoy the days that we have. Um, you
mm,
know, uh, like do something that you like, fulfilling, like look after your dreams while you are here.
yeah.
So I think like longing for salvation, I'm not sure like if it's longing for salvation or not, but like they just many of them just try to enjoy and
Mm,
have as much pleasure as possible.
yeah. 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 No, that makes sense. Um, and the next one he goes through is about destiny, or how much control we have over our own future in the course of our life. Do we have significant agency as individual actors in a play that we direct, or are we living in someone else's play and just following a script that someone else has written? Are we more fatalistic, that things are going to go just how it's been predetermined, or do I have a large amount of control over that? How much control or agency do Japanese people feel they have over their own lives and futures versus how much do they, yeah, just think, things are going to play out the way they're going to play out?
I think there are like different groups even within Japan. Um, some people, like especially elite people, uh, to me, I feel like many of them are living in a narrative of like, strong control, like,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's possible. Um, um, One of my friend, he is extremely successful in his business and he's earning so much money. And when I met him in Japan, I asked him like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you earning that, you know, amount of money? What do you want to achieve?
Hmm.
And he
Hmm.
answered that if I prove myself this way, people will listen to me. people
Mm,
will praise me.
hmm.
So that's why I'm doing this. So it's pretty strong, belief in like I can control
Yeah.
people's heart. Um, um, on the other hand, there are people who cannot control their lives. Like kind of like we have like a word like loser, and
Mm,
there are many people like that too. Japan has a strong hierarchical, sense, like, which university are you from, or like what kind of
mm,
company are you working for? Are you just doing a part-time job, or you're doing a full-time job in a good company? So for these people, I think they don't have a strong sense of control. An interesting trend of Japanese like pop culture now is like there's a specific genre called like, tensei, like, born again literature in a
mm-hmm,
pop culture, and
hmm.
it's all about like uh they born again, and then they are like superhero or something like that,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
their level is like already max, and they can kill all the monsters and that kind of thing. So it's pretty interesting to me. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's a way through an art form that desire to be different and have a different, life is popping up in a
Mm,
in that way. In fiction
perhaps.
way, Pastor Rota shared about that very thing the other day.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was talking about how, in a real sense, Christianity does offer a new life,
That's true.
and born
Born
again
again.
into a new reality where you're not the hero, but
Right.
you know who is, and he's rescued you. But anyway, so
Right.
he uses that as a way to connect with folks with the gospel.
I
Well,
love that.
the last magnetic point we'll just touch on briefly, and then we'll kind of bring our conversation today to a close. But is on a belief in a higher power, or a sense that there's some higher power out there, some intelligent mind, something governing the universe, some ultimate reality that stands, behind the veil of our, what we can physically observe. So what sense the Japanese have, if any, of a higher power, and who or what do they believe that to be? And perhaps another way to get at this same question is when in times of crisis, or when life completely goes off the rails, where do people instinctively turn?
Mm, that's an interesting question. I think again, like it depends on like which demography we are talking about in Japan. But in general, like, in terms of like ordinary Japanese people, I think many people have some sense of like, God, or like, something bigger than us. And even though I said that Japanese people are not very religious, they're, I think, pretty spiritual, and they're pretty open to believing in some like bigger power. So many people go to shrine, uh, even
Mm,
though they do not say that, like, they are believing in Shintoism, uh, but they believe in their God, like
mm,
as a concept.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I think, and like, I recently read a novel about like, um, Japanese like very first missionary in Japan, and like this author interestingly mentioned that Japanese situation is kind of similar with Ethan, which is described in the book of Acts. There are many different kinds of gods, and like
Mm,
there's even like a statue of unnamed God, and
yeah.
like I think Japanese people's religiosity is kind of a little bit similar with that. Like,
Mm,
yeah,
mm,
they don't know, they don't verbalize it, but they feel that there's some kind of God, maybe unnamed God, or many
yeah,
different kind of God.
yeah. It's like they want it to be true. Um,
I think so. Many of
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, what a wonderful opportunity. Yeah, and Bavinck's argument is that all of these magnetic points are things that we can safely assume about every human being. And he makes a theological case for that,
Mm.
so that we can lean into those points of magnetism, and speak into those, and help unstop or unblock, things that are blocking that magnetic pull towards God, as we, engage in conversation and relationship with them. But okay, well, final question here. Um, you've lived here for several years now, and you've interacted with several churches and many American Christians. What are one or two things that you would want American Christians to know about international students here, or perhaps Japanese students, whether that's Christian students or non-Christian students? Like if you could, um, yeah, share a couple nuggets of wisdom that would help them better engage in cross-cultural ministry um, together with other Christians as well as to non-Christians. What would that be?
Yes. Well, first of all, I'm really, really thankful for, m many Christians I met here. They really, took care of me and like they showed a lot of love. So I'm so thankful, and you guys are doing really great job. One thing, interestingly, I realized, which I'm not sure if it's true or not, but like one thing I realized when I was interacting with local Christian people here, probably it's American culture. Like you respect individual rights and individual decision and agency. So basically, like you let us do uh, whatever we want, or like what my specific context or situation I was thinking was about like I often sometimes see international students being left out from conversation, or or just group, or like at the Christian events or gathering. I sometimes see international students standing alone, or
Mm,
talking with other international students, but not necessarily engaging in the conversation with American people. And probably like one thing I realized, like in my culture, if there's one person being outside of a group, we feel like strong pressure to like invite this person to the
mm,
conversation. But one thing I left is probably like American people are really like, giving us space, and like perhaps we want to be alone, and like if we
mm,
like I think like American people believe in agency, so like their perception might be like if they want to talk with us, they come to us, so
mm,
let's give them a space. But perhaps like especially for Eastern Asian people, they are kind of more like reserved, and like they don't feel comfortable with like chiming in a conversation.
mm.
So perhaps if you guys find people like that, it might be okay to approach it then, and hey, like where are you from? Or, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty okay.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not sure if it's correct or
yeah.
yeah.
No, no, that's helpful. Yeah, yeah. Well, Takaki, thank you for that, and thank you for this whole discussion. Again, it's always a pleasure to chat with you. And just the other day, Courtney was saying that we need to have Takaki over. So, to your point of like taking initiative to welcome you, so we'll find a time to do that soon.
No,
But
that'd
yeah,
be
thank
great.
you so much. Let me
Thank
close
you.
this in prayer, and then let you get back to your work. If you enjoyed this episode of the Christ Our Redeemer Seminary podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment, leave a review, and then share it with others. That would really help more people find and engage with this content. Thanks for listening. God bless you.